So I touched on this very briefly in my video yesterday, and it was the issue of threats. Raquel and the Thomas family have all sorts of threats which are coming from all sorts of different directions. She has the threat of Detective Howard and how he wants to get closer to Kanan and reveal the truth about who he really is. There's also the war against Unique and Worrell hitting Lou in episode 8. Toni seems to be working with the detectives herself to try and catch Marvin and reveal that he really is a drug dealer, which Symphony saw. There's also the threat of Lil Rob in Queensbridge, who knows that Kanan was the one who created the bad batch of crack. He was the one that snitched to Howard, and that information has found its way to Raquel. And although Davina does seem to be out of the picture for the moment after she was taken into foster care, I do think she's going to be back at some point, and she's another threat to the Thomas family because of the impact that she has on Kanan. So in this video, we're going to look at all these threats and how they're a problem for Raquel, Kanan and the Thomas family, what impact they could have, and how Raquel can deal with all of these threats. And as usual, we're going to be linking some of these situations back to Power and how Kanan in Power always had his head on a swivel. But of course, if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 3 and Power Universe related. Let's talk about Toni first, because this is one person who we've not spoken about in detail this week, but she still remains a threat to Marvin, Raquel and the Thomas organization. In the last episode, we saw the recording device which was under her desk when Marvin was doing his rounds and collecting his money, but she wasn't willing to pay Marvin until he said what the money was for. She pressed him and she pressed him, and she continued to ask him what the money was for and tried to get him to admit that the money was for drugs and that he was the one that was supplying her. But with Marvin, he thought fuck this, and he was out there. He definitely knew what was up. So as Marvin left the club, we saw Toni then approaching the two cops, trying to convince them that he is the drug dealer, and not just him but his whole family in Queens. But they told her that she's heading straight to prison because they have her on intent to distribute unless she gets them someone bigger, and it can only be one of the other Thomases. But here's the key, Symphony saw everything that went down, and no doubt this is something that's going to go back to Raquel at some point, either next week or in episode 10. And Symphony is someone who has so far shown us that he's loyal to Raquel, and he's also loyal to Kanan when he promised not to tell Raq about him getting arrested. He's not done anything else to tell us anything different, and I do think he is who he says he is. But with Toni herself, this is definitely someone Raquel will have to get rid of one way or another, and this is a threat which they can get rid of to also get more control over the club lanes, where they can start doing business more, especially if they do get rid of Toni. And I'm sure Raq would be more than happy to pull the trigger on Toni. We saw her dropping her first body of the season in episode 8 when she killed Gabriel because he was a problem for Julia, and Joaquin made it clear that he was never a fan of him either. So she helped both Julia and Joaquin in killing Gabriel. But getting rid of Toni, either with her going to prison or killing her, would allow Symphony to have more of an increased role with the club, which would also be a huge bonus for Raq. But that's Toni and how Symphony could play a key role in this threat to Raquel and the Thomas organization. Let's talk about Davina next, because she was a very early death prediction because of how sprung Kanan is, and he can't afford to be. You can't afford to take your eye off the game and make mistakes because it will cost you, and so far it's cost Kanan the death of D-Wiz. There's been several implications to Raquel's business, and most recently, dead bodies all over the streets because of his bad crack that he cooked up. We saw how Lulu took his eye off the game for a split second in episode 8, and you really do need to have eyes at the back of your head. Just have a look at how Kanan had his head on a swivel in season 4 episode 9. When Cristobal sent some of his men to kill him, he sensed and he knew there was trouble behind him and in front of him, and this was someone who was aware of his surroundings because he never took his eye off the ball, head on a constant swivel, until it came to Tariq. But on a side note, you never take the lift either, always take the stairs, because you can look at what's coming in front of you, from behind you and on top of you. Raq tried to use the lift in episode 6, but it was broken, and we know one person who entered the lift alive and came out dead, and that was Jason Michich, so you always take the stairs. But back to Davina, not only did she give up the location to the stash house, but she's another huge distraction to Kanan, but she was taken into foster care because of the death of her mother about a month or so ago. And I really do feel sorry for Davina because she's just a kid who was backed into a corner, and she's practically being a mother to Tanisha, and she's just a kid herself. But regardless, she's still a threat because she's a distraction to Kanan. Raq even said no wonder Kanan is walking around the house all droopy-eyed, and a threat to Kanan is a threat to Raquel because she really wears her son's heart on her sleeve. But let's move on and talk about Unique, Worrell and the rest of their crew, because this is arguably the biggest threat to Raquel because they're coming at Raquel with the intention to completely wipe them off the map. They want the Thomases dead and buried so they can take over the south side. And there's been a constant back and forth between them, and Unique has made the biggest move yet in episode 8 when he went on the offense and attacked Lou because he wanted to send Raquel a real message, and she would have heard it loud and clear, that's for sure. And this is where she's really going to need the help of Marvin. Despite the differences and the issues that they've had over the course of the first season, they're going to have to learn to work together, and Raq is going to have to learn to trust Marvin as well. But Unique has been in the driving seat all season long. He's played it perfectly so far, but I do feel the hit on Lou was a huge mistake, and one that will prove costly because it's going to force Raquel into giving Marvin this role, which he would never have got if Unique didn't attack Lou. He was on the verge of being frozen out by Raquel, but without knowing so, Unique inadvertently put Marvin back in with Raquel and the Thomases, and now he's going to play a key role for them. The threat of Worrell is also still there, but I'm going to link yesterday's video down below where I spoke about Worrell and how he could have an impact on the war with Unique and Rac. But let's move on and talk about Lil Rob. He's also another threat, and someone who snitched on Kanan. Lil Rob, who's from Queensbridge, was working with Marvin on the highway, but he was very quick to squeal on Kanan, and not once but twice. First, when they went to this crack house, Marvin questioned them what happened. Lil Rob was quick to jump in and tell him that they were going to step on the product, but Kanan came and did all the cooking, which is what caused all these dead bodies to drop. We then saw Detective Howard pick him up and then tell Raquel that he was told by Lil Rob, who's from Queensbridge, that it was Kanan who had cooked all the bad crack. So now Raquel knows that Lil Rob was the one who snitched on Kanan. Now we all know knowing too much information on the world of power can get you killed, along with being a snitch, and this is another threat to Raquel and Kanan because he knows how much Kanan was involved in all of this. I fully expect Lil Rob to be dealt with either by Raquel, Marvin, or even Kanan himself, because he's gonna have to step up and play his part, because Scrappy and Lou definitely can't. But Raquel knowing that Lil Rob was the one who snitched on Kanan, that is one threat that is going to be dealt with. Now a threat I do eventually think will be killed off at some point is Detective Howard, although I don't think he'll be killed this season. Although Raquel knows that he's a threat and is pushing to tell Kanan the truth about who he really is, killing Detective Howard causes you all sorts of problems if you've not planned it to perfection. Raquel will try and do everything she can do to keep Kanan away from finding out the truth, because there are so many truths and secrets that she held back from him until episode 8. But this is one secret which I really don't know if it's going to be revealed to Kanan, because I had a conversation with a few of you in the comment section about whether Kanan even knows his father. So if we were to rewind it back to Power in season 5, Kanan told Tommy in his apartment that he never really knew his father, so it does make me wonder whether Detective Howard is wiped off the board before he gets a chance to get his bone marrow transplant or even tell Kanan that he's his real father. So I can really see a scenario where he's killed before Kanan even finds out that Howard is his real father, but that's the threat of Detective Howard, which will have to be dealt with at some point. But I really don't think it's going to happen this season. I think this is a storyline that's going to rumble on into season 2. Now one person who isn't a threat to Raquel and the Thomas organization at this moment, but could very well be in a future storyline, is D-Wiz's brother. No doubt at some point we will be introduced to D-Wiz's brother, and he's going to be a new threat once Raquel deals with all these issues that she has. Now Raquel is someone who knows D-Wiz's brother as well, describing him as a wild boy and someone who would have guns hidden around the crib. So this could very well be a threat that will come knocking on the door of the Thomases at some point in the future. But let me know what you guys think down below about the threats that Raquel has and how she's going to deal with them all. There's the threat of Toni trying to catch Marvin and the Thomas family. There's Davina, whose Kanan's so sprung off. There's Unique, Worrell and the war that she has on her hands. Detective Howard, who wants to tell Kanan that he's his real father. Raquel definitely has a lot of threats coming in from all directions, so let me know how you think she's going to deal with each one of these. Drop all your comments down below, and of course if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 3 and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.